Okay, I'm OmniDog. Thank you for tuning in to A Walk in the Woods at Midnight. I am here with my co-host, Jenny. Jenny, how's it going?
It's going good. It's going good. How about you?
Good. So far, so good. I am up and alive and walking, which is more than you can say for the people in some of these movies. Not all of them get up and walk away. We are going to talk about The Ritual today. We were going to talk about two movies, but we decided that two movies is too many. We watched two movies, but we're going to just talk about one and go in depth on one. And the one we chose is The Ritual. And what can you tell us about The Ritual? We're going to spoil it. So if you haven't already seen it, we'll tell you when we're going to start to spoil it. So right now we'll just describe it for you.
Yeah, just a quick, overview of the plot. This is about a group of college friends. This is off of IMDb, so it won't really reveal much, but we'll probably reveal more later about it. A group of college friends reunite for a trip to the forest, but encounter a menacing presence in the woods that's stalking them. This is a film that is set in Sweden, but they filmed it in Romania, interestingly, I think. And so it's a British film. It has British actors. And the director is named something. I'll find it in a second.
Okay, no problem.
David Bruckner, and he had directed just like a vignette that's in VHS that I think was fairly popular. So this is a feature-length film that he did. Should I go through just the characters really quickly?
Sure.
Okay.
I recognized one of them from being the butler in Downton Abbey. That's Hutch.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes.
Hutch, I recognize his accent and his voice. Yeah.
Yeah. So Hutch is one of the friends. These are guys who knew each other in college. He is probably the most charming, like open-hearted one of the bunch, I would probably say. He's kind of the center of the group.
Yeah, the most level-headed, it seems like. Yeah.
The main character is Luke, and we'll talk about him a little bit later. Phil is one of the friends who doesn't really have much to do, frankly. And then Dom, who's kind of like this goofball guy who has gotten really solidly into, family life and has kind of moved beyond what is, their college days. And there is the one last guy who, one of their last friends who ends up being killed for there are specific circumstances around that come to play in the film.
Right, which to me is actually the scariest part of the movie, is that part in the movie that happens early on in the film, because that's the most realistic part in the movie.
Yeah.
Should we just go ahead and start talking about
Let's just start talking about it. Yeah, I think so.
Well, to me, that's the most. There's five of them, and they meet in a pub, and they're talking about their annual getaway that they always take.
Guys trip.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so they decide they may want to go hiking in Sweden, and they're still sort of mulling it about. And they go into this liquor store, and the two guys, Luke and what's the other guy's name?
I know. Let me look up his name because I forgot it.
We'll refer to him as Guy Who Gets Killed in the Liquor Store Robbery.
Exactly. His name is it Robert? Is that right?
Robert. Okay. Yeah. I don't know. He's not there for very long because he gets offed so quickly in this liquor store robbery. Spoilers are starting now but that just sets up the rest of the film. But Luke has the bottle of vodka in his hands. They see something's wrong, and Luke immediately sees something's wrong and runs and hides while his friend is standing there, and the robbers come over and confront his friend, and Luke is just hiding behind, the end cap down at the aisle. And that's the scariest part of the movie for me, because I could feel myself in that position with my heart pounding out of my chest at the fact that my friend's being confronted, but his friend wouldn't let his wedding ring go, which I totally would have just said, here, cut my finger off if you have to. You can have my wedding ring. It's okay. Here's my wallet. Here's my wedding ring. You can have my shoes if you want, whatever. Just, leave me alone. And so that's why he gets killed, because he won't let go of his wedding ring. And he ends up getting killed, which is a great guilt that Luke, because Luke hid and didn't help his friend. And so, and Luke does a great job. The actor that plays Luke does a great job. His face of portraying the sheer panic. And at one point he grabs the bottle, like, I can use this as a weapon. And then he thinks better of it. And he's conflicted, and this happens in only a matter of seconds, but he does a really good job of portraying about 4 or 5 different emotions that run through him right there in the course of about 10 seconds. What should I do? And it's a guilt that he carries with him through the rest of the movie. It's an underlying theme that goes through the rest of the movie. It's a major, it's actually not an underlying theme, but I mean, it's a major theme.
It is the theme. Yeah. And I think, well, first of all, Jess, I love that that the end of that aisle is called an end cap. I love that.
I was in retail for a little bit at the end of at the end of my college career. Yeah, I worked in a record store.
That's awesome. Yeah. So that's true, and I want to just embellish even just a little bit on that.
Sure.
And I think that's a great overview. I think there are a couple things that happen where you can learn little pieces of their personalities. So Luke, who is the main character, when they open the movie with the 5 of them in a bar, and when they're talking about where they want to go for this year's boys trip, and it may be yearly, it may not be, but clearly this is like a regular thing that they do, because they have little words that reference it, like let's mix it up this year, or let's do something. So it does give you this idea that this is something that they do repeatedly, and you can tell that Luke is really kind of like the one who is like the least, he's kind of arrested in his development, where he's not really yet, he hasn't really become an adult yet. And you can really tell this, I think, in front of the liquor store, because on the way home, Luke wants to party more or whatever, get drunker. And all the guys are kind of like, I'm going to take an Uber home. I want to see my wife before bed, whatever it is. And then, when his friend Robert, who goes into the convenience store with him to get the liquor, goes in with him, Luke is complaining to him a little bit about how one of the guys had suggested going out to brunch instead of going to, instead of going out to bars to meet up and stuff. And so and his friend Robert is really kind of like, this is what happens. Like, this is where they should be, in a way, know? And then when the fight starts. Yeah. So I thought that really kind of said something about his personality. And you got the idea that, Robert was the one who suggested Sweden. And I don't think most of them really loved that idea. I don't know. Did you get that sense? I don't think they were like, yeah, camping in Sweden.
No, they only did it out of a sense of obligation because he got murdered, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. And so they were out there.
I think their ideas were more like, let's go, to Bermuda or wherever they want. I can't remember what the ideas were, but they wanted someplace sunny and fun, or It
Yeah.
didn't sound like they wanted to go roughing it in Sweden.
Right, right. And I think it's funny because they were throwing out these places and you could hear the you could hear like Luke's responses versus their, the friends' responses. And Luke's were always like, oh yeah, like let's go to the islands. And they were like, that's where young people go, kind of
Right.
thing. And Luke's like, this is what like we are young. And it's like, no, you're really not, like you're in the middle of your life and you kind of like grow up a little bit, and he kind of wasn't there. So, and I think that really kind of informed what happened next. So the next time you see them, it's Luke waking up in a tent. They're out hiking in Sweden.
Right.
So I wanted to know kind of like if there was a scene, right, close to like when he first woke up in his tent and they kind of came out. They had like a shrine to Robert, who was killed.
Right.
And
that they went to the top of the hillside to set up for him.
Yeah. What did you, because there were definitely emotions around that, with the guys kind of passing around the flask to take a drink for their friend.
Right.
It seemed really fraught with tension. Did you pick up on that? And if so, what was that, what was that about? What did that say about each character, really?
Unfortunately, I didn't pick up on each individual's emotion. I picked up on the group's emotion, where I felt like they all felt like they were there out more of a sense of responsibility, rather than doing it out of a sense of fun. And they were there begrudgingly, and they felt guilty about being there begrudgingly.
Yeah.
That's what I picked up on, that the whole thing was a guilt of a guilt trip made of guilt.
It really was.
Yeah, that they felt guilty for going, and they felt guilty that they were feeling guilty, and so and of course Luke was feeling the guiltiest of all, and so I just felt that it certainly wasn't fun, and it wasn't emotional. They weren't feeling the right emotions. Like if they had, I feel it would have been a lot neater if they had, neater isn't tidier, if they had all said, okay, great, we're going to Sweden then, and then perhaps the murder had occurred. Then they probably could have gone. But since they went out of a sense of obligation, I feel like that set up the tension where they all felt, throughout the whole trip in the woods, like they didn't need to be there at all if only certain things hadn't happened. Because everybody ends up getting it. Doesn't take long for the whole thing to devolve into Lord of the Flies anyway. But the whole thing devolves into, we didn't need to be here at all if only this thing hadn't happened. And so I think
did you see it as a kind of a punishment then? But did you see them being kind of like, this is something and I guess that's kind of a ritual. It's kind of like the guys' trip itself is a ritual.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about what you were saying, that, going to do this is kind of like, it's almost like they're making this pilgrimage for their friend to kind of like try to get over what they're experiencing. Because you're right. I mean, guilt is like through this whole thing. And I think sadness and loss, and these guys, I don't know, like some of them seem to connect on a deeper level than others, but that may just be their personality. But a lot of it is glancingly like, these are guys they went to college with and maybe don't have big connections with anymore. Maybe they do. I don't know. It seemed like a little bit like, here's a point where some of us are moving on, and some of us are
Exactly. I think
stuck.
that's exactly the point where some people start to split off and have they become closer to their wives and their kids and other friends, and they start to move on from their college friends while they still have a relationship with them. They're not quite as close with them.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but that's a I the the it's set up perfectly when the Dom um, starts to hurts himself, and they've got to make the decision, which is of course always the bad decision, to make a shortcut through the woods, through the forest in a foreign land, or even America. I would never make a shortcut through the woods,
Oh my God, like
in
an
America.
Appalachian?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be like you don't know what you're doing.
No way would I do that. Unless I was, born in the woods, would I do that? And so that's when they, Dom hurts himself and they have to make a decision. Let's take a shortcut. And one of the guys points out when they're halfway through, well, it'd be called a shortcut if it was really a shortcut, but it's not on the map, so it's not really a shortcut. And they've got a compass and a map and no cell service. And at first it reminded me a lot of the unscariest movie ever, and that was Blair Witch Project, which
Did you hate Blair Witch? Did you see it though after it had been hyped a lot? Or before?
I saw it right when it came out, right as I saw it, like it got hyped on a Wednesday. I saw it on a Friday. And I came out really disappointed because my wife and I saw different movies that night. This was back in '99 or whenever it came out.
Yeah.
My wife and I came out. We saw different movies. I can't remember what she saw, but I looked at the movie posters and I had a chance to see Austin Powers instead. And I was like, I should have seen Austin Powers. Damn it. Because I was really just not scared of I mean, to me, that was a wasted opportunity, that movie, because there was a lot of really primal stuff in that movie. That this was the movie that movie should have been or could have been. There was a lot of scarier stuff in this movie that I think that they ran with that Blair Witch could have been, but a lot of it reminded me of Blair Witch with the symbols. And of course, then you start seeing bodies and the cabin they run into that
that is a really bad idea to go into.
Right.
I mean, of course, a lot of this is like horror movie logic, but I have to say, like, there are some things that they did that weren't, at least they were like ever so slightly logical. Like there was a horrendous rainstorm. It was getting dark. I mean, I don't really know what I certainly would not have been able to fall asleep in a house like that, even if I saw coverage there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of it is kind of, I mean, you're kind of like, well, what else would I really do in that case? But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, there certainly are moments when you're like, come on, man, no, don't do that.
I would have, yeah, but I would have gone into the cabin. But I think that since you point out the director got this from a small vignette in VHS, which I still need to see.
Oh, he directed a small vignette, but he didn't. This is based, I guess, on a novel.
But did he get this movie based on what he did in VHS?
No, I don't think so. He directed a piece of, one of the vignettes of VHS.
Well, whatever he did, I thought the dream sequences that kept leading back to the liquor store, that kept incorporating the liquor store into the reality. I mean, like, reality kept blending the liquor store scene into reality. I thought that was really effective because the liquor store never went away. It just stayed throughout the whole movie, just blending into reality, blending into the dreams. You weren't really sure where the liquor store ended and reality started, because he incorporated it so well into the movie, that it
Yeah.
seemed like Luke really felt like he was always stuck in the liquor store.
Yeah, yeah. Like he couldn't escape that. And like one thing that I noticed, you know, in the liquor store, you know, when he was really there, or when he was first dreaming about it in you know, in a specific way, he, like, every time his friend would turn to look at him expectantly, like, come on, are you gonna step in?
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, are you gonna really sit there while I go through this? And that, you know, it's interesting because I feel like, you know, because the whole time I was kind of like, go, get out there, go. You know, I wasn't I think that it's interesting because that was definitely, at least it struck me as something that like a choice a child might make, because they would believe they're not strong enough to do this, or they somehow self-preservation wins out because you kind of don't have like this more developed sense of, like, I don't know, protecting people or being more mature. So yeah, and then definitely during one of the scenes when, like, the liquor store, the convenience store, whatever, appeared in the forest, and one of the burglars, you know, who was killed, you know, who killed his friend, looked at him and said, "Coward," you
Yeah.
know, which I found like really, you know, there's a lot in this movie where you're like, maybe it's not necessarily like horrifying jump scarish stuff, but it definitely gets way deep into your primal brain, where
Yeah.
you're just like, at the you know, it's like at the core, what does it mean to be human, or a child, or grown up, or going through, what does it mean to go through a ritual of growing up? Is it getting married? Is it having kids? Is it saving your friend? Is it getting to the, you know, getting through a forest on your own, you know, some magic terrifying forest? I don't know. But I really saw that the forest as being, yeah, I mean, I think clearly it was for a lot of them, but especially um, for Luke, it was like a trip through his subconscious and trying to conquer this stuff.
Mhm.
I don't know what it meant that his friends all died. You know, I don't
In a
know.
horrifying manner.
It's like, is that part of what happens? But yeah, I mean, I wanted to ask you like a couple of questions too about the end. I don't want to write. We can definitely go back, but I want to talk. Well, let me ask this actually first. There was the friend Hutch,
Yeah.
who kind of was the guy who had the compass, and he seemed a little bit more experienced at doing something like this. And he was, what he, like, the fact that he was killed first, I think, was bad on a very practical level for
That
them.
was a surprise to me when he was the first to go.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like his leaving really led to some raw stuff
Very raw. Yeah, because he
within
was
the
a bit
team.
of the glue that held them together. He was the mature one who could make mature decisions. Um, he he didn't blame Luke. He kind of he was one of those guys that could take each one of the guys and pull them aside and kind of talk level-headedly to each one, and kind of rally the troops. And then he gets taken out, boom, first thing. And Luke's already punched one of the other guys, Dom, because Dom's already called him out on not defending his friend in the liquor store, and Luke's already, you know, punched him in the face. So you know things have already started to fall apart, and then so um, to have him taken out, and then I think Luke becomes the de facto leader at that point. He's the man child, and he takes over, and I think he does an effective job. But then they start to, you know, the god of the forest starts takes the other guy, and then I can't think of his name, but takes the one guy, and then they get captured.
Oh, yeah. He kills, after Hutch, he kills Phil, the guy who
Phil,
kind of
yeah.
didn't have much to do in the movie except be an extra friend or something.
Yeah.
And then, and then he kills Dom. No,
Well, he
doesn't
gets
kill
sacrificed.
Dom.
Yeah.
He gets captured with Dom. Luke
Right.
gets captured with Dom. And I thought that was a really interesting pairing because those two, I think, had the most static. And I think what's also interesting about this is that Dom was the one who was kind of the whiniest guy. He
Right.
wasn't really, it made me think like, dude, Dom, like, would you have not hidden? I kind of couldn't imagine him stepping up and like fighting off these these burglars or anything. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong there. Maybe I'm not giving Dom enough credit, but he seemed like a real,
Well, as somebody that's torn their meniscus several times, I will say I know it hurts. So you tear your meniscus you're on the top of a mountain and you've got to get down. I know he's in a lot of pain, but I also know he's seen as the whiny buffoon. And I know it's going to hurt having to hike out of those woods. So I sort of felt sorry for him, but I also understood how they painted him as the whiny buffoon. They did a good job of kind of making him sort of the whiny buffoon that thinks he would have been the courageous one in that scene. Yeah, you're exactly right. I don't know. It would take a special person to have the balls to step up and take a bottle of vodka and stick it in the dish of some guy who's got a big weapon in his hand in a liquor store.
Did you say stick it in the dish?
Yeah, the face.
What is that?
Stick it in the
face. Is that like a local expression? I've never heard that.
Yeah, that's an expression my friend uses from California. It gets up in my grill, gets up in my dish.
I love that. I'm going to write it down.
I mean, to me, that would take, I don't know. I have a hard time doing anything but hiding in that situation, I think. I would have a hard time doing anything but giving the guy my wedding ring and everything. I would just want out of that situation. I am not, I was not a trained Marine or anything. So I don't have the tools necessarily to break a bottle of vodka and slash it across the guy's face. As much as I'd like to think right now, sitting here in front of my computer, that's what I do. Dom in the movie thinks, is all dismissive of Luke, not a drop of blood on you. You weren't even close to the situation. So you must have hid, is what he's intimating. Mm-hmm. That, to me, that's why it's the scariest part in the movie, because it's the most realistic scenario. I get the primal fear of this Swedish god that grants them all eternal life, and they sacrifice to it, and that's like supposedly the ritual. But there's all these other rituals that you're talking about that go on through this whole movie, especially the manhood rituals and the rituals of growing up, and there's all these other rituals that we've been talking about. So the ritual of the god is the least of the rituals to me.
It's like the least important one in a way. It's certainly a big part of the film, but it's not the one that we care about the most.
Right. Exactly. I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of find out, like, at the end, there's, we have Dom and Luke, both captured by these, I don't know, hillbilly cult, ancient Swedish hillbillies. I don't know.
Yeah.
What we find out is that they worship this ancient forest god who's the illegitimate son of Loki. It was very interesting. I don't know. Well, so I don't know, but I mean, it's so I guess like with Loki, I have just like the evermost passing familiarity with him, and I know that he shape changes and he manipulates and he, and so this local cult says that he grants them everlasting life, and they never die, and it's through this worship of him that they get him. And so they are, they're sort of locked up in this room, and they're figuring out that there's this ritual going on. They can kind of see out of the little log cabin or whatever they're in, log cabin of death.
Yeah.
And they see like, you can see that like Dom is the one who is being chosen for the sacrifice, because the old lady comes in who is, I don't know, queen of the cult, and looks at Luke and checks his chest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's got, there's probably a lot we could say about that, like the wound. It looked to me like bullet holes, but in the old woman, it looked like the symbol of, I don't know what, Odin,
it looked like some symbol that had been almost tattooed on her, and he had the same symbol gouged into him or shot into him at some point by, I guess, the forest god.
Yeah, it seems like
he had been marked by the forest god to join the cult.
Yeah, because he was the, like, he had true sadness, or he had like,
right, true pain, true sadness, true pain. Yeah, he had some kind of true misery that marked him able to join this cult.
Yeah.
And he had a choice. He could either join the cult and have everlasting life, or I guess they were going to kill him.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they were going to sacrifice him next, or I don't know, just like kill him for not being obedient. I thought that was really kind of interesting, and that's probably a whole other discussion about why only the ones who have extreme pain would be allowed to worship this, forest god. I don't know, really. Maybe there's some reason we didn't think of for that. But so I noticed that before Dom got hauled off, right, to be beaten up or whatever, be taken out for the sacrifice, he'd said a few things to Luke.
Mm-hmm.
And he said something like, I want you to get out of here. Like, after they take me, don't look back. Just go. I need you to tell my wife that I love her and that I was trying to get home to her. And that's not a cowardly move for you to leave. You got to just go. Because there's, and so I thought that Dom giving him permission to do sort of like this thing that he initially, was blamed for, was interesting, in that it was almost like a brave act in itself, because he had to carry this message to Dom's wife.
Right. Yeah, so it was brave on Dom's part to give him that permission.
Right. And he also told him to burn this place to the ground.
Yeah, which he did.
Yeah. What do you think of that? What did you think of that weird upstairs room?
The mummified victims that all could talk and stuff. I don't know. We haven't really talked about how scary the movie was, since the whole point of our talks is always about the scary part, and whether or not we'd recommend it from a scary part. We're kind of analyzing it for the deeper thing, but there's plenty of scary scenes in this movie. That was a disturbing part when he goes into the attic of mummified living creatures that are just sitting there and can still talk and are having a conversation like it's something out of Disney World. and it was odd. And he gets a torch and sets them all on fire. I thought it was good. I guess the movie gives him some kind of redemption at the end because he escapes, and he escapes, sets the place on fire, gets a gun that sort of halfway works, and takes a couple people out, shoots at the forest god, and escapes to the edge of the forest where the forest god can't get out. It has no powers. I thought that was interesting. The forest god couldn't leave the forest.
Yeah.
And the forest actually has an end. Which is always interesting to me, that the forest had a beginning and an end. Which
Yeah.
I never really think of, that a forest has a beginning and an end. And then he just starts yelling at the forest creature as like a primal roar, kind of several roars that could mean a lot of things: victory, revenge, vengeance. I don't know. His roars could have meant a lot, but he's pretty beat up. And my friend and I were wondering, okay, how does he explain this to the cops? But that's part of the movie that you don't get to see. I mean, they do provide him with some redemption, that he's able to assert himself and escape. But there's plenty of scary jump. There's plenty of jump scares involving the Swedish god himself, and there's plenty of disturbing moments. There's lots of good disturbing moments as far as the scary movie's concerned. There's a lot of, but as you say, it's more of like an intellectually visceral, primal movie, where it's more like psychological disturbance that bothers you throughout this movie, like the guilt that bothers Luke throughout the whole movie, that drills down on you through the whole movie. There's plenty of other jump scares and stuff, but it seems like there's more psychological disturbances in this movie that upset me more than scared me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I feel like so I agree with you. I think that one of the things that we didn't really talk about is the monster, the god himself.
Yeah.
And that was, I thought, pretty cool. And I don't really know that
the design of him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know that you really see him fully until like Luke goes upstairs and sets fire to all of the very old people who the monster, the god, had granted life, and are just like wrinkling and terrible. And he's like looks into this future, and it's that like Arrested Development, where they can't die.
Wait,
they don't want to die.
Is that what those people were?
Oh yeah. They were like the elders who couldn't. They were like the elders of the people who were like who were the worshipers. So they were ancient, and so because they wouldn't die, because the god had granted them this everlasting life, so their bodies were falling apart.
Oh, I didn't pick up on that. Okay.
Yeah. And so that was really interesting. Sorry to get analytical again, just briefly.
No, that's fine. I didn't know that's who they were.
Yeah. I mean, that raised an interesting idea, because they are arrested in they're not going to die. They're not moving forward past anything, just like Luke was. He's stuck in this moment. And so he sets fire to them, and he's sort of like rejecting this idea of staying stuck. And so I thought that was like a final thing where he was just like for like done, you know, like this is all gonna go away. And then it's, you know, you do sort of like see the monster fully for the first time. And what did you think of the monster itself, and what did you think of finally seeing something that was unseen?
I I thought it was designed really well for a god. I thought it was, you know, what makes it scary is that it's so fast. If it had been a
Mhm.
big lumbering creature, it wouldn't have been that scary. But
Yeah.
it's so fast and moves so fast that you can't even see it moving, and it makes a terrifying sound. That's
Yeah.
what makes it scary. If it had been like one of those old zombie movies where it moves like a mile a day, then you know it wouldn't be scary. But this thing moves super fast, and so it's really scary. And it's got horns and stuff, and it's up on, I don't know, I don't even remember how many legs and arms it had. Now that I think back on it, I can't remember its design, but it was it
It was
had,
elk-like almost. It was like an
yeah,
elk with a human twisted on top or something with human arms, and but it had other arms.
and it had two
Really.
teeny little weird little eyes down in the, yeah,
Yeah.
it was pretty oddly designed, but I think that's good that it didn't look like some 10th grader drew it in class. It looked like some kind of weird design, which I think is good because it's like not as I would conceptualize it, which is good. I want it to be something that I wouldn't have thought of, and I wouldn't have thought of that. And yeah, it was its speed that made it so terrifying
Yeah, and
to
it's like
me.
this ultimate power where I could just pick up a tent and rip somebody, you know, like just, you know, like yeah, it was clearly this extremely powerful force you had no control over, you know,
In the forest, though, it couldn't leave the
in the
forest.
forest, in the
Yeah,
forest. And yeah, I mean, I really am a lot like you where I don't like to see the thing. Like I think that I like to imagine it, but I feel like in this movie you had to see it because this is literally him confronting his fears. And
good point.
so yeah, and he stands up and you know, he tries to sort of like push Luke down to try to get him to worship it, you know,
Hmm.
and Luke's just like, done, don't, no, not going to do it anymore. And I think I thought about it a little bit because when he leaves the forest, you know, I didn't see, you know, I wonder if he still had that wound any longer, you
Oh,
know, or if he'd gotten past it and the beast didn't want him, or if he just truly like got through to the end of this big journey of healing and of moving on. I don't know, but yeah,
big
I think
ritual.
big ritual. Yeah, yeah. And so it's, you know, it was, I thought it was really good. I love the mood of it. I mean, I thought it was probably, you know, I don't know if it was like one of the best, I don't, you know, it wasn't, it wasn't Hereditary. I'm sorry, but what is, you know? Um, but it was, I think it was pretty solid. I don't know. I thought it was
Yeah,
pretty cool to
I
watch.
definitely recommend it. It's a highly recommended film. It was very well done. I thought that cinematography was great. I thought the direction was great. As I said, I loved how the dream sequences bled into reality. How reality, I couldn't tell the difference between the liquor store. The liquor store became reality. I mean, you couldn't. It was reality. I thought that was so inventive and interesting that it was so uh, ingrained in his mind, his failure or his self-preservation in the liquor store was actually part of his reality. And I just thought that was an amazing part of the movie because it was the theme throughout the movie. So
Yeah.
I highly recommend this movie. I thought it was really well done.
Yeah, yeah. I would definitely recommend it too. I think you're right. The direction is amazing. The way it looked was amazing. The mood, everything about it's really gives you a sense of like this giant, like uncontrollable forest in nature, and kind of like, I don't know, getting, and seriously getting through something
Yeah.
mentally, yeah,
Right.
and emotionally.
And also, it's a good reminder never to go through the woods ever at all.
Ever.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's where we got the name of the show, A Walk in the Woods at Midnight. Don't go through the woods ever.
Let us
America,
go through it
Sweden.
for you. Yeah.
Yeah, let us go through for you in the safety of our computers.
Yeah.
Don't go through the woods no matter what country you're in. I don't even care if it's like a friendly country like Canada or Sweden. Don't go through the woods. Ugh.
Agree.
Okay. Well, this was a great episode. I hope you guys, you viewers out there, got a lot out of it. We recommend this movie, and we hope you enjoyed our discussion of it. And next week we will be watching Train to Busan, as recommended by my friend Lou. And feel free to leave comments, suggestions, anything you want. And that was this week's episode. Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you.